income and purchasing power. In this section, we're going to look at inflation and prices. You should be able to define inflation and explain how it is measured. You should be able to describe the types of inflation, the causes of inflation, and explain how inflation and employment levels are related. Lastly, you'll be able to explain how inflation affects spending, saving, and investing decisions. So what is inflation? Price is the amount a buyer pays for a product or service. Inflation is an increase in the general level of prices for goods and services. Inflation reflects how much prices are rising. When prices are rising faster than income, buyers lose purchasing power. In other words, the money workers earn will buy less as those prices rise. Changing prices affect the spending power of both producers and consumers. The economy changes over time based on events and habits and attitudes. The economy changes over time based on events and on habits and attitudes of producers and consumers. For example, an event such as a flood or hurricane that wipes out crops may affect prices. Habits explain how people react to changes in the supply of goods, world events, and their individual situations. For example, when consumers think they may soon lose their jobs, they tend to buy less and to buy different goods. Attitudes reflect how people think about their future and about the product being sold. Will the product help me stay healthy? Is it worth the price? These are questions a consumer might ask that reflect attitudes. All these factors affect prices and inflation. So, how is the inflation measured? Inflation is measured by the U.S. government. The measurement tool used is called the CPI, or Consumer Price Index. The CPI uses a list of goods and services that are commonly bought by consumers. The index measures changes in price from a base or starting point in time to the current time. For example, if the price of an item was $1 in the base year and it is now $1.12, that is a 12% increase in the price. If the increase happened in just 1 year and it happened to all the goods on the list, the inflation rate for the year would also be 12%. You can learn more about the CPI at the Bureau of Labor Statistics website. Let's look at the government also gathers information about consumer spending. Its surveys measure spending habits of consumers and track data such as income. There are three types of inflation that we're going to take a look at right now. Um, let's talk first about the types of inflation. Businesses will base price decisions in part on what consumers are buying and not buying. Several price change patterns may happen over time. These patterns result in varying types of inflation. So we're going to talk about three of them very briefly: disinflation, reflation, and hyperinflation. In disinflation, this occurs when prices are rising, but at a slow rate. In other words, prices are rising, but at a decreasing rate. Some products and services do not increase in price as fast as others. Often this happens when demand for a product is not the same throughout the year. For example, in spring and summer, the price of swimsuits may be high and rising. In fall and winter, however, if the price is rising, it is doing so at a much slower rate. In reflation, this occurs when prices are high but then drop due to lower demand. Then they are restored to the previous high level. Perhaps you have heard a news reporter use this term to describe crude oil prices. Reflation can happen when the available supply of a product, such as oil, goes up and down. Reflation can also happen when consumers temporarily stop buying a product or service. Then, for some reason, they start buying it again. For example, when gas prices surge, people may not buy as many big cars and trucks that use a lot of gas. They wait to see what will happen with the gas prices. When the gas prices fall, they begin buying large vehicles again. The last one we're going to look at today is the hyperinflation. And hyperinflation occurs when prices are rising so rapidly they're out of they are completely out of control. In the United States, there have been periods of double-digit inflation, 10% or higher in a year. However, inflation rates are much higher. Although there is no set rule, many economists consider inflation rates of 50% or higher to be hyperinflation. Some countries have had rates of several hundred% per month. For example, in Germany after World War I, in 1923, the monthly inflation rate reached over 300%. The effects of very high inflation rates can be devastating. With hyperinflation, prices are rising so rapidly that consumers spend their money as fast as they can. They do this because they fear that prices will be even higher if they wait. The spending leads to even more inflation. Then people are unable to buy the goods they need to live comfortably. Let's take a closer look at deflation. Deflation is a lowering of overall price levels. It is the opposite of inflation. In other words, prices are going down. This happens in periods when events cause consumers to buy less and when producers are able and willing to provide goods at lower prices. Some products go down in price over time, even when the country is not in a time of deflation. For example, a computer that uses a new, faster processor may sell at a high price when it first comes on the market, and then a year later, the same computer may sell for hundreds of dollars less. The price is lower because it is no longer the newest, fastest computer available. Other, newer models have been released. Let's take a look at the causes of inflation. Um, There are three commonly referred to causes of inflation: demand pull inflation, cost push inflation, and real cost inflation. And inflation can be caused by different factors in the economy. Consumers may want to buy more goods or services than are available, and this drives up prices. Producers may have to pay more to produce products, and they may need to raise their prices. Both situations can lead to inflation. In demand pull inflation, this is considered the most common type of inflation. Demand pull inflation occurs when consumers want to buy more goods and services than producers supply. Consumers may spend their income as soon as it is received, and they are willing to spend future income, which is credit, as well. This spending causes businesses to scramble to meet the demand for goods. Because products are selling so quickly, businesses are able to raise prices to balance supply with demand and to make bigger profits. This type of inflation is often described as too many dollars chasing too few goods. In cost push inflation, this occurs when producers raise prices because their costs to create products are rising. For example, when wages go up, the cost of producing a product goes up. Producers may then raise prices. If producers did not raise prices, profits would shrink. Cost push inflation occurs when cost increases are not offset with greater output that lowers the cost of each product made or each unit made. And productivity is a measure of the efficiency with which the goods and services are made. When productivity rises, the cost of a wage or other increase is offset by producing more and better products. In this case, inflation, price increases, does not incur. Instead, more and better products and services are made at the same price level. The last one we're going to look at is the real cost inflation. As resources diminish or become harder to get, prices in the prices rise in the form real cost inflation. As resources diminish or become harder to get, prices rise in the form of real cost inflation. For example, when there is less natural gas or companies have to dig deeper to get it, this causes the cost of providing natural gas to rise. Over time, resources that are high in demand may shrink in supply. With a growing population's ever increasing demands, this may happen with many products. To avoid this type of inflation, people must find other resources to use instead of the one that is scarce. Let's look at inflation and employment. Economists think there is a relationship between inflation and employment. In times when prices are high, producers often make more money. They are able to hire more people, thus, higher inflation also means higher employment. When inflation is reduced, people may be laid off. This is because prices are not increasing, and therefore profits are not increasing. With lower profits, producers may start laying off workers. In times of zero inflation, price levels are flat, not increasing or decreasing. Businesses may not be able to afford to hire workers, thus, mild inflation of, say, 2 or 3% can be good for the economy. Let's take a look at in times of inflation. So, inflation affects spending, saving, and investing. Inflation has a negative effect on the value of money. As general price levels rise, the value of money falls. Thus, employees who work for a set rate of pay are able to buy less in times of inflation when prices rise. This is because some jobs provide pay raises only annually or less often, While prices are rising on the goods and services employees buy, their pay is not rising at the same rate. Thus, consumers have two choices. They can buy less, or they can borrow money to continue the same level of spending. Either way, it takes more money to keep getting the same amount of goods and services. Inflation also affects the amount of money consumers may be able to save. In times of rising prices, consumers may have to use more of their disposable income to buy needed goods and services. Less money may be available for saving. The time value of money is a concept that says a dollar you will receive in the future is worth less than a dollar you receive today. The time value of money is a concept that says a dollar you will receive in the future is worth less than a dollar you receive today. This assumes that prices are rising. For example, suppose you loan a friend $20 today. Your friend promises to pay back the $20 1 year from today. The money you receive 1 year from today will not have the same value as the money you loaned your friend today. This is because prices will be higher 1 year from today, and the money will not buy as many goods 1 year from now as it will today. Consumers consider the expected rate of inflation when choosing investments. They want to invest their money in a way that will provide a return that is greater than the rate of inflation. For example, suppose the inflation rate over 5 years is 5%. Investments such as savings accounts, stocks, or bonds must have a growth rate of at least 5% for the money invested to keep its purchasing power. Thanks for tuning in, and look forward to seeing you or hearing from you on the next installment of Your Income.